The village square was silent, broken only by the occasional crackle of the sacred fire being prepared near the altar. Shumba stood at the forefront, his arms crossed, his face stern. Yet behind his golden eyes was a storm. His son, his blood, stood accused of treason against their people. He had raised Paka to be strong, wise and loyal, yet here he was, a prisoner in chains, defying everything Shumba believed in. Shumba's heart ached, but his voice remained steady as he addressed the villagers gathered around. "Let this be a lesson," he declared. "No one, not even my son, is above the will of the gods. Paka must face Naraka's judgment. Only the lion god will decide if he is worthy to remain among us." In the crowd, Paka's mother, Tina, clutched her shawl tightly. Her face was pale, her eyes brimming with tears. She stepped forward, trembling, and grabbed Shumba's arm. "Shumba, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "He is our son, our only son. Have you no mercy? You raised him with your own hands. Is he not a part of you?" Shumba stiffened, his jaw tightening. "Tina," he said firmly, "he betrayed our people. He questions the gods. This is not a matter for mercy." You are watching the Tales of the Savannah. Subscribe and be part of the tribe. Now let's get back to the story. "Not a matter for mercy," she cried, her voice rising. "You are his father before you are a chief. Look at him, Shumba. Do you not see yourself in his defiance, in his fire? He is young and foolish, but he is still your son." Shumba turned to face her, his expression softening for a brief moment before hardening again. "I cannot let my heart rule this decision," he said quietly. "If I do, the village will lose its faith in me and in the gods. This is bigger than you, me, or Paka." Tina sank to her knees before him, tears streaking her cheeks. "If not for him, then for me, Shumba. Please, spare him." But Shumba stepped back, shaking his head. "The gods will decide." Paka, standing in chains nearby, watched the scene unfold with a bitter expression. "Don't waste your tears, mother," he said coldly. "He's already made up his mind. Let him put on his show for the village." "Paka!" Tina turned to him, her voice desperate. "You can stop this. Just ask for forgiveness. Apologize to your father. Bow your head and let him see your regret." But Paka's jaw tightened, and his eyes burned with defiance. "I will not bow, not to him, not to anyone." Tina's face crumpled and she buried her face in her hands, sobbing. Shumba watched her for a long moment, his resolve clearly shaken, but he quickly turned away. The high priestess stepped forward then, her tall frame draped in crimson robes embroidered with golden thread. Her voice was steady and commanding as she addressed the crowd. "We call upon Naraka, the great lion god, to pass judgment this night," she announced. "Prepare the altar and bring forth the sacred offerings." The villagers murmured nervously as they placed the sacred items on the altar, feathers, claws, and bowls of glowing embers. The air grew heavy with the scent of burning herbs and the crackle of flames. The priestess raised her arms, her voice ringing out in a rhythmic chant that filled the clearing. Paka stood watching, his chains clinking softly as he shifted. His heart pounded, but he refused to show his fear. "This is all for nothing," he muttered to himself. "The lion god won't come. This is just another way to scare people into submission." The chanting grew louder, and the flames on the altar shot higher, turning a strange golden hue. The ground began to tremble beneath their feet, and a low, guttural roar echoed through the air. The villagers gasped, many falling to their knees. Paka's eyes widened as he felt the air grow thick and electric. For the first time, doubt flickered in his mind. "It's not real. Gods cannot walk among men," he whispered, but his voice faltered. From the flames, two enormous golden eyes appeared, glowing with an intensity that seemed to pierce through everyone present. The roar grew louder, shaking the very earth, and the figure of a massive lion began to emerge. Its mane shimmered like fire, and its steps left burning marks on the ground. The villagers cried out in fear and awe, bowing their heads to the ground. Even Shumba, unshaken until now, took a cautious step back. Naraka's voice rumbled, deep and resonant, as the lion god turned its gaze to Paka.
"You dare to question the gods?"
it demanded. its voice filled with both fury and curiosity.
You defy your father and your people. What gives you the right?
Paka swallowed hard, his defiance wavering for the first time. He met the god's gaze, though his knees trembled. I have only spoken the truth, he whimpered under the gaze of the mighty Naraka. Our people live like cowards in the shadows. I meant no harm by my actions. Please, Naraka, do not end my life. The god's eyes narrowed, and the crowd held its breath, waiting for Naraka's response. The flames roared higher, and the night seemed to close in around them. Kitapo felt her strength returning, coursing through her like a long-lost friend. The fever that had sapped her energy was gone, thanks to her father's care and Mwamba's steadfast dedication. Yet, as her health improved, so did her restlessness. The stillness of life beneath the waves lacked a sense of excitement. She longed for freedom, for the wide-open world beyond the boundaries of her underwater realm. But how could she ask to leave again? She had failed the first time, her recklessness bringing shame and worry to her father and Mwamba. Their faces betrayed their unspoken fears. Kitapo's heart sank as she wondered if they would ever trust her again. She resolved to turn her thoughts inward, to focus on her people. Her father had warned her many times. The outside world was a dangerous place. Perhaps she was meant to belong only here, under the water, where her safety was assured. But deep inside, she wanted to go outside one last time. Yet a vivid image haunted her, a woman she had never seen before. In the haze of her fever, this woman had appeared, her eyes aglow and a strange energy swirling around her. Who was she? The memory refused to fade, like a song half remembered but impossible to forget. Determined to uncover the truth, Kitapo approached Mwamba. "Mwamba," she said hesitantly, "when I was sick, there was a woman with you." She was chanting something. Who is she? Did I imagine her? Mwamba's expression softened, his lips curling into a faint smile. "No, child, you did not imagine her. That was Nyala, a dear friend of mine. She is a healer like me." Kitapo's brows furrowed. "But she wasn't ordinary. She felt different. Is she human?" Mwamba chuckled softly. "Yes, she is human, and she's extraordinary. I'll give you that. Few healers possess her gift." "Can I see her?" Kitapo's voice trembled with hope. "I just want to thank her." Mwamba's eyes narrowed, studying her as though he could read her very soul. He knew Kitapo's longing wasn't just about gratitude. She craved connection, something she had always struggled to find among her own people. Her human blood set her apart, making her a curiosity to the other merfolk. Even now, as her father's daughter, she often felt like an outsider. "Please, Mwamba," she pleaded, "just this once." After a long pause, Mwamba nodded. "Very well, but only for a short visit. I'm sure Nyala would be happy to see you." Before they could set out, the sound of distant drums reverberated through the water, their rhythm sharp and urgent. Mwamba stiffened. The drums were not from the surface. They were from within. Kitapo's heart pounded as the sound grew louder, closer. Moments later, a procession appeared, moving through the water with graceful yet deliberate purpose. At its center was an elder, his flowing robes shimmering like scales under the refracted light. "Lulenga," Mwamba said to Kitapo's father, "you must come at once." The king emerged, his presence commanding even in his silence. The elder from the procession bowed low before him, then spoke. "Great King Lulenga," he began, his voice deep and measured, "we come from distant waters, bearing a request. We wish to unite our realms through your daughter." Kitapo's breath caught in her throat. She stared at the elder, her mind reeling. A union? Marriage? Her gaze darted to her father, whose face betrayed no emotion. Lulenga's voice was calm, but carried the weight of steel. "Who sent you? And what do I gain in return for this union?" The elder straightened his back, his tone measured but filled with urgency. "We come on behalf of our prince Tuhaka," the elder said, his voice resonating like the deep currents. "He is not just a ruler in waiting. He is a warrior who has fought to protect his people, a leader who commands respect and a visionary who dreams of a united ocean. He sent us because he sees in your daughter not only beauty, but strength. A union with her would not be a transaction, but a bond of equals." The elder paused, letting the weight of his words settle before continuing. "We seek no riches, no conquest. What we desire is harmony, a partnership that ensures peace between our realms and prepares us for the threats that loom beyond the horizon. Together, your daughter and our prince could build something far greater than either of us could alone." The threat he spoke of was a real one. There was a sect of mermaids who called themselves the Fish People. They were a ruthless faction that had once set their sights on conquering the human world. However, their plans had been thwarted when they lost their leader, Majari, during a fierce battle against the warrior women of the island. Defeated but not broken, the Fish People had retreated, regrouping in the shadows and shifting their focus to other mermaid kingdoms. The whispers of their resurgence had spread across the underwater realms, and even Lulenga had heard of the threat. For now it seemed distant, like a storm on the horizon. Yet, the possibility of their attack worried him, a constant reminder of the fragile balance between the worlds above and below the waves. His eyes flicked to Kitapo, who stood silently beside her father, her face a mixture of sadness and unease. Being a princess was like a cow being fattened for slaughter. Yes, you had all the luxuries you could dream of, but your life was never truly your own. It was a commodity, meant to be traded for something greater, peace, gold, or territories. Just another piece on a chessboard, moved only at the whim of the player holding it. But deep down, she had always hoped things would be different for her. She had dared to dream that her life might be her own, that she could choose her path. Yet the weight of expectation pressed down on her shoulders, reminding her that hope was a dangerous thing for someone in her position. The elder softened his tone, as if speaking directly to her. "Princess Kitapo, this is not a request made lightly. Our prince knows of your courage, your spirit, and your uniqueness. He believes the sea itself brought you into this world for a purpose greater than you can yet imagine." Lulenga studied the elder, his sharp eyes searching for deceit. "And what if my daughter refuses? What if her purpose lies not with your prince?" The elder did not hesitate. "Then we shall leave with no ill will, great king. But know this, tides shift, alliances waver, and dangers rise. This union is not merely a joining of two souls. It is a chance to safeguard our worlds. The choice is hers, as it should be. We only ask that she considers it with an open heart." Lulenga's eyes narrowed. "We will consider your request." The elder nodded respectfully. "We await your decision, great king." As the procession retreated into the depths, Kitapo turned to her father, her heart pounding. "Father," she began, her voice low but firm, "you won't agree to this, will you?" Lulenga placed a hand on her shoulder. "Do you trust me, Kitapo?" "Yes," she said, though her voice wavered. "Then trust that I will always do what's best for you and the kingdom. Always." This was the third suitor to come forward, and each time it chipped away at Lulenga's resolve. He knew the importance of a strong union for Kitapo. Her future and the stability of their realm depended on it. But as a father, it broke his heart to see the despair in her eyes. Kitapo clenched her fists, her heart heavy with longing. If only she had a mother like the other girls. Now would have been the perfect time to talk about things that only women understood. The absence of her mother felt like a gaping void, growing larger with each passing day. Kitapo knew her father was weighing the suitor's offers seriously, and the thought shattered her. Why couldn't she just stay here, in the home she loved? Why couldn't things stay the same forever? But no, even here her sanctuary was stifling. The water, once her haven, now felt like it was pressing in, suffocating her spirit. She needed air, freedom, and answers. "I want to see her now, Mwamba," Kitapo said, her voice trembling as she gulped the elixir Mwamba had prepared. She set the empty vial down with a thud and motioned for him to follow. Mwamba hesitated. "Kitapo, now, Mwamba," she insisted, her tone sharp with urgency. He nodded and followed her. Lulenga watched them vanish into the water's embrace, worry and sadness washing over him. His shoulders sagged under the weight of his role as both ruler and father. He turned his eyes upward, as if seeking guidance from the unseen heavens above. "It is not easy being a parent, Akina," he murmured, his voice low and filled with sorrow. "I wish you were here." The light in his eyes dimmed, and for a moment, the mighty king of the merfolk was just a man, alone, grieving and uncertain of the future. "Akina, I am very sorry that I left you," Lulenga said, his voice soft but filled with raw emotion. "It was not my intention, but I'm here now, and I love you." Lulenga's words struck her like a wave, leaving her breathless. Before she could reply, Lulenga stepped closer, his warmth surrounding her like a cloak. The intensity in his eyes made her heart race. He gently placed his hands on her shoulders, pulling her toward him. She could feel the undeniable connection between them, the love and longing that had never faded. "Lulenga," she began, but her voice faltered as he leaned in, his lips brushing against hers. The kiss was soft at first, but it deepened with passion, igniting feelings she had buried for years. She couldn't resist him, she didn't want to. All she wanted in that moment was Lulenga. The world around them seemed to vanish, leaving only the two of them, intertwined in a timeless embrace. At the river's edge, the water stood as a silent witness to their union, rippling gently under the moonlight. It felt like a dream, too perfect to be real. "Akina, Akina," a voice called out, cutting through the haze of her emotions. The sound startled her, snapping her back to reality. Her eyes flew open, and she found herself in the dimly lit hut, her breath ragged. Jabali was beside her, his hand gently shaking her shoulder. His concerned eyes met hers. "Akina, are you having a bad dream?" he asked, worried. Akina blinked, disoriented and ashamed. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment, but she was thankful for the darkness that concealed her face. She struggled to compose herself. "Yes, I was having a bad dream," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Jabali raised an eyebrow, a teasing smirk tugging at his lips. "Well, it didn't sound like too terrible of a dream. You weren't screaming. It sounded more like a moan." Akina felt her face flush even more. She quickly turned her back to him, pulling the blanket closer around her. "It was nothing," she mumbled. "I think I was just dreaming about the forest." Jabali chuckled, his tone playful. "Don't lie. Who finds the forest stimulating, Akina? I can make your dreams come true, right here, right now," he said, leaning closer to her. "Stop it, Jabali," she hissed, glancing at the other side of the room where Chipo was curled up in a blanket, fast asleep. "Chipo is right there." Jabali groaned, rolling onto his back. Chipo had been sleeping in their room for the past few nights, ever since Paka's return. She was terrified of being alone, fearing the lion man would come back for her. "Well," Jabali said with a sigh, "I think I'll talk to Chipo tomorrow. Paka is probably far away by now. She needs to be a big girl and sleep in her own room." "No, Jabali," Akina protested, sitting up slightly. "You weren't there. You didn't see the fear in her eyes. Paka is a menace. If he comes back and takes Chipo, I don't know what I'll do. Please, let her stay." "Chipo is braver than you think," Jabali replied firmly. "I'll speak to her tomorrow." Their conversation ended and Jabali drifted back to sleep, but Akina lay awake, her mind swirling with confusion and guilt. Her dream of Lulenga had felt so real, so vivid, and now it lingered in her thoughts like a shadow. She couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't just haunting her dreams, he was invading her reality. With a heavy heart, she closed her eyes, but sleep refused to come. Somewhere out there, beyond the safety of the village, Lulenga was waiting. And deep down, Akina knew she wasn't ready to face what that meant. The next morning, Jabali paced around his homestead, restless and unsure. He needed to talk to Chipo about her sleeping arrangement, but the thought of the conversation made him uneasy. She had been sitting in a corner, knitting intently. It was something she had taken a liking to recently, ever since she had seen older women making jerseys. Now she was deeply engrossed, her hands moving swiftly as she worked with the colorful thread. "Isn't that a hobby for older people, Chipo?" Jabali asked, trying to sound casual, though his nervousness crept into his voice. Chipo glanced up, a smile tugging at her lips. "No, father. It's fascinating to see something come from just a thread and turn into something useful and wearable. I love it. I think this might be my new favorite hobby." Jabali nodded, forcing a smile. "Well, I'm happy for you. That's good. But, I actually wanted to talk to you about something, Chipo." She stopped knitting and looked at him directly, her bright eyes curious. "Yes, father?" Jabali shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his neck. "It's about our sleeping arrangement." Chipo frowned slightly, her knitting needles pausing mid-air. "What about it?" she asked, her tone guarded. "Well," Jabali began, choosing his words carefully. "My hunters and I went tracking Paka yesterday. His tracks led far from the village. I don't think he's anywhere near Makuru village anymore. Don't you think maybe it's time for you to start sleeping in your own room again?" Chipo put her knitting aside and scratched her head thoughtfully. "No, I don't think so, father. I enjoy sleeping in the same room as you and mother. I feel safe there." Jabali took a deep breath, trying to remain patient. "Right, exactly, Chipo. But how about this? I'll make you a bell. If anything happens, you can ring it, and we'll come running." Chipo raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "A bell? Am I a cow? What is a bell going to do for me when faced with a lion, father? I don't understand what the big deal is. I was just sleeping in my corner." "I don't disturb anyone. Have I been disturbing you? Oh no, have I been snoring?" Jabali sighed, waving his hand dismissively. "No, Chipo. It's not about snoring, it's just... Never mind." He glanced over his shoulder and saw Zuberi and Kosana approaching his homestead. Grateful for the interruption, he decided to abandon the conversation. "We'll talk about this later," he said quickly. Chipo smirked and picked up her knitting again, clearly satisfied with the outcome. Jabali stepped forward to greet the two men as they approached. "Brother," he said, addressing Zuberi warmly, "Kosana, I hope you're well." "We are well, Chief," Zuberi replied, smiling. "I see Chipo is thriving," he added, glancing at the young girl who was now chatting with Naya, Kosana's daughter. "Yes, she is," Jabali said with a chuckle, though his earlier conversation with her still lingered in his mind. Kosana bowed his head humbly. "Chief Jabali, I have a request." Jabali's brow furrowed slightly. "Speak freely." Zuberi stepped forward. "Jabali, Kosana has been through much. He is asking if you would grant him a piece of land in our community so he can build a home here." Jabali turned to Kosana, his expression softening. "You wish to join the big family of Makuru?" he asked with a smile. "Yes, Chief," Kosana said, bowing his head again. "I want to start fresh, for myself and my daughter, if you would allow it, of course." Jabali's smile widened. "How could I say no to that? You are welcome here, Kosana. I know exactly where you can build your home, and the community will help you." Over the following days, the people of Makuru village came together to help Kosana build his home. The sound of hammers and cheerful chatter filled the air as men and women worked side by side. Jabali supervised the effort, ensuring everything was done swiftly and with care. Kosana watched with gratitude, his heart swelling as he saw the villagers welcome him with open arms. He glanced at Naya, who was laughing and playing with Chipo nearby. It was the happiest he had seen her in a long time. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of hope. This was more than just a new home. It was a new beginning. As the sun set on the final day of construction, Kosana stood outside his newly built hut, his daughter by his side. He took a deep breath, the weight of his past beginning to lift. Maybe, just maybe, they had found a place to heal. And that, my dear tribe, marks the end of another thrilling chapter in our Mermaids, Lions and Witches series. Naraka has made his entrance, and now I ask you, my tribe, what do you think would be a fitting punishment for Paka? Kitapo's hand in marriage is on the table, but should Lulenga prioritize the kingdom over her feelings? Akina is battling the ghosts of her past, and Kosana has finally found a place to call home. The drama continues. Want to support the channel and become an even bigger part of our tribe? You can join for as little as the cost of a coffee each month. Your support helps me continue creating the content you love, but of course, just having you here is already more than enough. Thank you for being part of this journey. To those of you who have already joined the tribe, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are truly the heartbeat of this channel. And as always, thank you for watching our story, and we hope you enjoyed it. What lessons did you draw from this story? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe and be part of the tribe. Thank you for watching The Tales of the Savannah. We will see you next time in the Savannah.